Okay. Sorry about waiting. Mike will come in 15 minutes because kind of time difference. I think I made a mistake for informing time to Italy, and Mike confused. Maybe our session is tomorrow. So something kind of happening was here. So anyway, he will join. And yeah. Actually, this session is just organized for the objective of sharing youth's experience and kinds of future perspective regarding your current affairs or environment sector or any kinds of career path. I just wanted to prepare, I just wanted to share kinds of time to have the common thoughts and sharing your own perspective regarding kinds of sustainable development and your expertise area and environment, something more freely, not that kind of official order of conference, something like that. Just it's kind of a talk concept. So I invited one of distinguished environmental scientists of Korea, Dr. Ki-hyung Kim, is moderator of this session. And actually speakers and panelists will be youth professional in water sector and other area of sustainable development. So may I introduce Dr. Ki-hyung Kim for his introduction?
Okay, thank you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Right. Okay. I'm Ki-hyung Kim. Will be a moderator with Dr. Ji-hyun Park in this Actor of Change workshop today. It's very regrettable that many people cannot be together due to the COVID. However, I feel honored to be in this workshop with so many people by online. I've been studying water environment as a mayor since 1998, and since 2005, I have been working on water environment in the field. There was a time when I was young like you, but I have no remember that I have ever attended such this workshop like you. I would like to express my respect to all of you attending in this workshop. As you already know, the water environment is not a problem that can be solved with great interest and effort. Required constant interest and effort that transcend generation, especially the energy and passion of a younger generation. When I was young, I had no interest and passion, so I think it is shame to demand interest and passion from you now. Nevertheless, I request you to never stop interest and love for the water environment. I believe that such love and interest can be deduced in a variety of ways. In this regard, I hope that in this workshop, we can gain the conviction that our future is bright and secure. I would like to thank the 3 speakers and 4 panelists in this workshop, as well as the many attendees online. Also, I would like to express my special thanks to Dr. Ji-hyun Park, plan and prepare this workshop. And finally, I wish happiness and peace always be with you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you for the speech, Dr. Kim. And before starting of our session, may we introduce each other, where you work and what is your interest or something, just a small introduction. Why don't you start from Haeju? Can you hear Haeju? Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Hi.
Bit of an echo, Haeju.
Yeah. I hope now it's fine. Yeah. Hi, this is Haeju Kim from, I'm working for JHSUSTAIN currently, and my major interest in this water sector is gender and water. So I will introduce kind of water and gender nexus in my session start part. Nice to meet you all.
Um, can you guys hear me? Okay. Hello, my name is Kaehyun Lee, and I'm an urban and environmental geographer, and also a researcher in JHSUSTAIN. And it is very thankful to participate in this wonderful session with remarkable speakers. Thank you.
And Crystal, please.
Yep, everyone can hear me okay? Cool, sweet. Hello everyone, I'm Crystal. I am an environmental planner from New Zealand. So I currently work for Tauranga City Council, and my role there is to assess urban developments, so subdivisions and any kind of commercial or residential development. And I also work a lot in terms of the natural hazard space and resilience in the city, like creating for the resilience. And yeah, glad to be part of this forum.
Okay, maybe I have to go. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Luisa. Well, actually, I might be the less qualified person in here to talk about climate, but yet I will give it a try. I recently graduated in international politics and markets, so like my kind of take is more from a political science. And well, actually right now I'm between jobs, like I'm looking for a nice I'd say an opportunity in a NGO or a place like that to actually work more on maybe climate change or like maybe on risk management and stuff like that. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you. And Mike, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Back. I'm a consultant working with JHSUSTAIN as well as a couple other companies in the United States. My background is as a hydrogeologist, and I've worked on water management, particularly groundwater, and various climate change projects in Korea, the Philippines, and various parts of Africa. Thank you.
And Sylvia, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sylvia, and I work as a water resources specialist at the Asian Development Bank based in Manila. Well, right now I'm based in Italy, but working from home. Well, glad to be here with all of you and to share my experience, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Sylvia. Yeah, actually, one of speaker, Charyong, she works at UNSDSN as a youth coordinator and fundraising, but she has a kind of serious illness, so she could not join. And from the panelists, also there was a actually kind of the Indian youth professional. Her name was Bibil, but she was also not could join final point. So why don't we start our session? So I would like to invite you, Sylvia, as a first speaker regarding her journey in the sector and her kinds of a project this moment. So actually, Sylvia, it's better for you. You can have a right to share your screen. So for operation, maybe it's better you just to share your presentation file, or if not easier, I can do.
Okay, let me try first. All right, so, well, first of all, I would like to say that this is a very informal presentation. Irene asked me to share my sort of my journey. So I did. So I prepared a presentation, which is really sort of like my personal journey in the water sector, as a young professional, and also with an initiative that I just set up a year ago. So starting with my young professional journey. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, the Young Professional is a program that the Asian Development Bank, well, other banks as well, have in place for professionals under 32 years old. It really spans from different sectors. So it's not only in the water sector, but really in energy, environment, and any other sectors that the bank is working on. So I joined the YP program at the end of 2018, in December 2018. And I joined the YP program in the water sector group. For those of you who are not familiar with the way in which the Asian Development Bank, which is based in Manila, so is HQ'd in Manila, and has different regional offices in the region, and also some offices in Europe. But for operations, it's mainly in the region. So in the 46 developing member countries, as we call them, DMCs, and in the region, in the Asia Pacific region. The bank has regional departments and has also departments that work to support regional departments and what we call operations, which means really the bread and butter of ADB, which is working with the government for development support. So I joined ADB in the water sector group, which is one of these sort of services and departments that the bank has to really work on the sector and thematic areas. And so I started in the water sector, meaning that at the beginning I was supporting operation departments in writing, developing projects, and implementing projects in all the realm of really the water sector, which, as you know, is very broad. So it was mainly, water, the environment as well, natural resources management, agriculture, and urban development as well. And when I started, I really looked at the entire portfolio of the bank, which is the Asia and the Pacific. My type of work was really to support the team with the advisory services that the bank provides to the different regional departments, as I said, which is mainly to support policy dialogue and also knowledge management. So my first year, and I think Irene and I'm really happy to see Mike as well on the call. So you're familiar with this publication, which was actually a cooperation and a collaboration among different institutions. So this is the first publication. This is actually really the first thing I put my hands on when I started with ADB. It is a flagship publication, and it's called the Asian Water Development Outlook. And it's a publication that shows the working progress of water security in the region, so in the Asian Pacific region. It started in 2013, and it uses a methodology that is replicated throughout the years, but it's also improved every 4 years. So I work on the 2020 publication based on the methodology that was developed in 2016, but we also sort of improved the methodology. And so this was actually launched last year. The publication was, as I said, a collaboration among different institutions, and among which also our Korean partners as well, the OECD, IMI, the International Water Center in Australia, and others. I also worked sort of like across the network that the bank has, and presenting the publication, but also supporting preparation of ADB's presence at World Water Week, which was back in 2019, which seems like ages ago, even in terms of what happened in the world between 2019 and now. But yeah, basically, probably many of you are familiar with the conference, and it's really a conference around water related issues. And that year it was about society and inclusivity. So I participated in the conference and really arranged all the sessions that ADB was organizing, and also we presented the Asian Water Development Outlook. Just to give you a little overview, you can also find it online, the publication, I mean. So the water, the ADO, as we call it, really looks at water security across 5 key dimensions. These key dimensions are basically entailing all the different aspects of water in society, so really in our lives. And these key dimensions are, you can see it on the wheel, rural household water security, which is really access to water supply and sanitation, and also making sure that this is affordable to everybody, especially the vulnerable groups. Then we have economic water security that really looks at uses of water for productive uses, including agriculture, energy, industry, among others. Urban water security, which is basically access to water supply, sanitation in our homes and in the urban environments, but also looking at aspects of, again, affordability, so water utility management, but also aspects of flood management and all the different aspects of disaster risk management within the city, and environmental water security, which looks at water more from a perspective of also the ecosystem services that water provides in nature, and so catchment management and also environmental governance, and water-related disaster security, which is the 5th dimension, which really looks at all the risks associated with water, coming from drought and floods to meteorological risks that could be storms, for instance, and all of that. I mean, the publication is very comprehensive, and it was a study that spanned, I think we took almost 2 years to actually finalize the publication, and it was really interesting to work across, and also to work with a lot of very competent people all around the world who actually really helped develop the Water Security Index. And so you can find it online. Then what happened after that is basically where I am right now. So the Young Professional Program is a program that provides, I mean, it's a 3 years program, and it's a rotational program. So after the first year, I decided to rotate to one of the regional departments that the bank is supporting, and this is the East Asia department. So the East Asia department covers the People's Republic of China and Mongolia. And I work more broadly. I still work on water, but I also work on other sectors. It's mainly, I mean, it's more encompassing. It's about the environment, natural resources, and agriculture. And yeah, agriculture / food security. And the type of work that I'm doing is completely different. So it's really, I'm working on loans and technical assistance projects, but I still do knowledge, because this is where my my passion is, science communication, and how to sort of like communicate all the things that I'm working on in an easier language, let's say. So knowledge is still one of my passions. That also relates to the other initiative that I created that I will talk to you that I will talk about later. But first, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what I'm working on. So first of all, I became a water resources specialist because when you enter the bank, you enter with this title, which personally I don't like very much. Young professional can mean anything and nothing at the same time. So and it really doesn't say, sorry, it really doesn't say anything about your actually profession. So I'm really happy that that I got rid of that title in the end. And so I am a water resources specialist right now, but I actually work across different aspects because, as I said, in my department, we work on several aspects related to environmental protection and water. So in terms of lending operations, which means supporting our counterparts and governments with loans. I'm now co-leading with a colleague my first project, my first loan project, which is in Chao Lake, which is the fifth largest freshwater lake in China. And it's quite an interesting project because, it's quite interesting working on such a big lake, but also, in terms of what we're trying to do, it's a very integrated project. We're looking at water quality aspect, but also at green financing mechanisms, working with the farmers to control non-point source pollution. So there are a lot of aspects that we're working on, and it's very integrated. One of the negative aspects of it is that I couldn't travel to China yet because because of the COVID and travel restrictions. And I really hope that the situation is going to improve in the future, but this has been one of my main challenges. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I've been based between Manila and Italy. That was a bit challenging also in terms of being close to the client. And other projects that I'm working on, I don't want to really go into detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions later. I'm working also on always in China on a program that we're putting together on the Yellow River. So this is not a loan; it's a grant project, meaning that we're not borrowing, but it's sort of like providing policy advice and technical assistance. And the Yellow River is the second largest river in the PRC after the Yangtze River. So it's also quite an interesting program. In Mongolia, I am putting together a program on climate change adaptation and looking at planning and community resilience. So this is actually a project that I'm designing right now. But I'm also working a little bit on air quality and food waste management. And as I said, knowledge is really sort of one of the things that I like the most. Although, knowledge is, sort of like a side of what the bank is doing. But I like writing blogs, and I like sort of like communicate what you're doing. So there's a lot on that as well. This is just to show you, just with an infographic, what we are doing in the Yellow River, which, as I said, is one of the Yellow River Basin. What we call the Yellow River Ecological Corridor is a new program, which actually, I manage the technical assistance component, but there's also loans attached to it. We are now developing the concept. The concept is ready, but we're now developing sort of like what are the key areas that we're going to work on. And these are mainly water and natural resources management and biodiversity conservation, looking at climate change aspects, but also at urban, rural, green development, because in China, rural areas are very large and very big. So they're mostly peri-urban areas. And so we're working on the integration of urban and rural spaces, and also on climate smart agriculture and how to integrate private solution and technology in all that we do. And this program will actually be sort of like launched in a way at COP15, the COP on biodiversity, which is actually taking place in Kunming, China right now and tomorrow. So apart from that, I also wanted to quickly present you something else that I'm doing on the side. which is, I mean, I call it my baby because it's my new project, which is a magazine that I established a year ago with, well, in the middle of the pandemic. I was isolated in Manila, and so I started chatting again with my teammates and you know, like my my colleagues at the university. I studied, I mean, I have a double degree, but my last degree was in Oxford. So I studied water management. And so I got in touch with some friends back in the days. And then we decided to, you know, put together this initiative, which started as a blog, but now actually became really a magazine. And again, you can visit it online. So basically what we're trying to do is we have sort of like framed it in a way that water cuts across all the different sectors of the society. And so on the magazine, you will find articles on different themes from climate, economy, health, nature, society, technology, and also investigations. And the magazine actually really provides sort of like, I mean, it was born as a platform to bridge the gap between natural and social sciences, and also to promote science in a different way, in a way that is a bit more digestible by people. It is a place actually where you can find content in different formats, including policy briefs, op-eds, but also photo stories. We also developed a video which was awarded by this organization called Let's Talk About Water. And so, yeah, we have a couple of graphic designers and video makers. By the way, this is 100% a volunteer initiative. So we're all volunteers. It's open access, it's nice because now we're starting collaborations with some organizations, and then it provides opportunity also for opportunities for young professionals who don't have many qualifications, and so, you know, like it's a very nice space, and I mean, it's a very friendly environment. So, I mean, this is just to give you an overview of what started as a passion project. We started we were two people, myself and Chris, who is the co-founder of the initiative, but we are now more than 100 volunteers from about 25 countries all over the world. And so the way we work is with Zoom calls on, you know, like Saturdays and Sundays. So, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun as well. So it's really a passion. It started for me as a passion project, but yeah, it is still, I mean, it's growing. So I'm really happy about that as well. In fact, we're also having a gala to raise funds for some of the initiatives that we are working on. And this is going to be on the 21st of November. So in case you, and it's a Sunday, so in case you want to tune in, it's not really East Asian time zone friendly, but yeah, you can just also poke me and I can give you more information about it. So just to keep it very short, I actually wanted to, I don't know, to just say a few words about what I learned during these years. And I mean, I still have a lot to learn, of course, but really, I mean, if I had to give any advice to other young professionals that start their career in water right now, or any other, you know, environment field, or actually any other field, I would just advise to, you know, just do things with passion and motivation, because that's what drives us really every day. And especially in a working from home environment, sometimes you really need to be careful about what you want and why you're doing it. Otherwise, it can become a little bit frustrating because you get detached from reality sometimes. And so one other thing that I learned is really to also take lessons from others and find good mentors. To me, in the bank, it was really, really important to really find people that I could trust, because I mean, the bank is a very hierarchical environment, and it was really difficult at the beginning to find my way. And so I really found 2 or 3 mentors that helped me a lot. These mentors were mainly women because yeah, I mean, one of the challenges is that as in any profession, when you start working in some sort of, these organizations, it's, I don't know, it's quite hard to find, women professionals that relate with you and your background. And so yeah, I mean, I'm really an advocate also for women's leadership more in general. So one of the things that I like the most about the Water Science Policy magazine that I co-founded is that actually we give a lot of opportunities to young professionals and to women young professionals also to thrive in a way, because it's not always very, very easy. And also, I mean, I think one of the most important things is also to always be creative about what you do. And if you find challenges, and if you don't like anymore what you're doing, also to be sort of honest with yourself and try to find ways to like learn new skills, or even do new things if you're not happy with what you're doing anymore. Yeah, I mean, one of my other advice to other young professionals would actually be to don't take yourself too seriously. So I mean, always be like, with a smile when you're doing everything, because yeah, just because it's my way of doing things, but I find it also that it can be having like a lighter approach to life and to work can make it a bit more fun. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to share my experience. This was really my personal journey, so yeah, but I'm happy to have shared that with you today.
Thanks a lot, Sylvia. Well, actually, it was really, how I can say, it's really just the only unique chance to hear through your experience to how you can make the kinds of lessons to make your plan and career path and your specialty expertise, something like that. And yeah, actually, in case of COVID for you, I guess that brings kind of dual effect. Of course, kind of some shutdown of the without transferring to from place to another place, but because of the kind of isolation, makes you kind of more concise and practical outcome on your own perspective and to lead your project. Many congrats on your promotion and also your project itself. So, do you have any question to Sylvia, or do you have any comment? Mike, yeah.
Yeah, I guess a question that I would have, Sylvia, because I'm sure I've certainly seen it as something that you've had to work with, is just being the youngest person in the room sometimes, especially when you have a project that you're managing or you're in charge of, and when you're working with kind of experts in your field and people with a lot of experience. What's been your experience as a young professional managing that type of situation, and how have you found that difficult, and how have you kind of overcome that?
Well, thanks a lot for the question, first of all, Mike, because yeah, no, I mean, it's been challenging, and it's been challenging especially for the loan that I'm managing right now, that I co-designed and that I'm co-developing, because it's not really with my colleagues that I have difficulties, well, sometimes as well, but it's with the client. So the client in China, especially the clients in China, are very demanding, and it's almost like, I mean, they see you. I mean, sometimes I prefer not to show my face because sometimes they see you and they see you that you're, yeah, as you said, the youngest in the room, maybe the less experienced. You are a woman, so there's a lot of minus in their view probably that you have to overcome. And so for me, this has been, and then of course on top of that, there's also the language issue, because there's, you know, translations involved and all of that. So for me, what really helped is, you know, with this imposter syndrome that sometimes you have, is actually to prepare yourself at the best. So always be on top of your topics, and you know, to be even more prepared than other colleagues, than other more senior colleagues, because it's just with your, if you can answer the questions that they're asking, if you can show that actually you have thought things through, I think this is really appreciated. And actually doing that helped me a lot, because I can also then see people coming back and saying, oh yes, thank you, that was helpful, you know, or thank you for this and thank you for that, and thanks for the documents and thanks for the explanation. So I'm not saying it's not challenging, because it is still challenging, but yeah, the way that I overcome that is really with you know, be really studying and reading a lot, even before the meetings. And even if the meeting is something that is like easy, but really being on top of your subjects. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, I still face challenges, but yeah, I guess that will be something that will be overcome with experience and age at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you. And any other person?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. As I told you already, when I was young, I have only interested in engineering sense or technical knowledge, but I heard Sylvia's presentation. I'm very encouraged and very exciting, because many young people have some very interested in kind of journal like this WSP. So I'm very exciting, and I think our future is very bright. So I thank you for your effort. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And as far as I know, actually, Jaehyun, he wrote for his master's thesis utilizing Asia Water Development Outlook, Sylvia. So maybe Jaehyun can mention something regarding his impression.
Hello, Sylvia. It was very nice to hear your session, and actually, it was very great to see a person who is working in ADB and also has participated in 880, since it has been like one of the main pillars of my master's dissertation. Yeah, and it was really great to hear your experience. Thank you.
It's really great to hear that it was one of the pillars of your dissertation, because I don't know, sometimes when you work on publications and reports and you know, research in general, you think like, oh, nobody's gonna read this. So actually, it's really interesting. I would like to read your dissertation if it's possible, and if it's finalized. So yeah, maybe we can get in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Then maybe if we have a remaining question, we can follow up after speakers and panelists other talk. So shall we transfer to Mike for his presentation? His presentation will be more technical perspective for groundwater management he experienced, but also he has kinds of insights for his plan in the sector. So why don't you start, Mike? So you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I can share my screen. Great. So as I guess I should introduce myself a bit more fully. My name is Michael Back. I'm actually in the United States right now, so it's a bit late. But I've been based in Korea for the last couple of years working with JHSUSTAIN. And I guess we'll be back in Korea shortly, seeing everyone. But my background is as a geologist. I'd say I have a bit of a non-conventional way into this sector. So I wanted to introduce with that a little bit. As Tian mentioned, my presentation is kind of technical, and I wanted to discuss what's really like I see as my first project, my first big project getting into this sector. And I found it very pivotal. And I think in general, as a young professional, your first steps into a technical field, especially with all the imposter syndrome that comes with it, and trying to figure out both what role you can play and how you can make as big of an impact and as big of a splash in the project that you're given as possible. So this was kind of my experience with this. I think I started this project back in 2016. And yeah, it's a bit more technical. And I think one of the challenges as a young professional, as Sylvia mentioned a bit, is where do you offer value and where can you offer value? And I think often some of the technical skills like GIS or modeling in our sector are places where a young person tends to have a bit more, just because when you come straight out of a master's, you have that kind of cutting edge knowledge around your sector and those things, but you still really need the guidance and someone to put a bit of faith in you in order to understand how to utilize that and where to use your skills. Because I'd say one of the most, at least in my experience, underrated facts about being a young professional is just how clueless you are coming into a project for the first time about the kind of bureaucracy or the way business is done in your sector or where you are. So this project was worked on through a consultancy for USAID. I worked with a groundwater hydrogeological consulting firm based here in the United States. And the project was focused in Senegal, in the Casamance and the Senegal River basins. So this has since grown into what is now the Feed the Future program, which is kind of one of USAID's flagship programs globally, although I'd say it's focused in Africa and the Sahel in particular. A lot of the work that I did with my agency in the US was based in the Sahel, Senegal, Niger, Burkina Faso, and a few other countries. So this was really focused on water resources in terms of addressing poverty and addressing food production. And you can see, I think you guys can see my arrow, but so down the Casamance River Basin is down in the south, just below the Gambia River Basin, and then the Senegal River runs north over the top of the country. And these, outside of Dakar, are two of the big population centers of Senegal. So this project was focused around multiple use water systems, which is when you're usually talking about rural development in this case, and these are water systems generally at a town or village level that can be used both for drinking water, household water, as well as irrigation. And so we MUS plans, basically the design of those systems on a national level. So as groundwater hydrologists, a lot of our task in this very large project was assessing groundwater recharge. And so if you know anything about the Sahel, most of the water usage up there is groundwater because the rainfall is relatively limited and there's a lot of the irrigation done through groundwater. So we looked at, our charge was groundwater estimations of groundwater recharge, which is a kind of notoriously difficult thing to do without actually getting on site and doing a pumping test. And even then, groundwater can be very variable over space. So here's kind of the end result, which I wanted to give you just for reference. And I will try to run through this because I know while this was a pivotal project for me, ultimately, we're talking about kind of young professionals and that role, and the technical pieces aren't really the goal. But really what we did is in the end, we ended up with 50 multiple use system plans, which allowed for the development of 10,000 latrines, 13 potable water systems, 10 sanitary centers. And basically all of those red dots you see, I believe those are the latrines that were developed. So those are ultimately the full scope of the project sites. And our assessment was able to support basically how much water can be used in all of these water systems, and how do you design water systems that are sustainable ultimately. So what we went to do, and whereas we did do a good number of pumping tests, when you're doing a nationwide assessment of this, it's really not practical to go out and conduct, what would need to be thousands of pump tests on wells across the country. So we used kind of a set of methodologies. The first was really using borehole assessments and estimates that have been made in the past. And this is, historical literature reviews, looking at who's done pump tests, who's done chlorine mass balance and different methodologies for assessing groundwater recharge in Senegal, and what are the values they got. And then mapping those to areas and mapping those to local geologies, basically. We then used what I find to be a really cool model. It's called the water gap model. It's developed by the German government. I'd say initially it was developed by a researcher named Petra Dohl, who is, I believe, currently based at the University of Frankfurt. And then that was kind of financed through the German government, through BGR, and developed this global map, which is an estimate of groundwater recharge globally based on a number of parameters, most importantly rainfall, but as well as global geology, soils, topography, a lot of different factors that go into groundwater recharge estimates. And this creates just this really cool tool. Of course, frankly, it is pretty inaccurate, and it has wide ranges of estimations of recharge. So, you wouldn't want to use this when building a house, but it is a tool that kind of gives groundwater people something that they've never had before, which is just a pretty good guesstimate of the entire world. So this was kind of our second methodology, was basically just taking what are the estimates from water gap. We then combined this with another set of, another methodology called a percentage of precipitation, basically, is just looking at rainfall stations and making estimates based on the local geology of what percentage of precipitation is going to be recharged, and then connecting that to meteorological stations. The final factor that we got to put into play was just looking at climate change in Senegal. And so I find these two maps pretty interesting because these are the historic average rainfall of Senegal. I believe this is 80 to 2010, and then 2000 to 2015. So it's basically, 40 years ago to 20, and then 20 years ago to, 2014. But like I said, this project was done already about 7 years ago. And it's dramatically different, and of course that's what has been seen across the Sahel, but it's just, I found it very interesting as a young professional to really see that very concisely in a map in my work, that rainfall patterns are changing quite dramatically, especially when you look at the north of the country, where there's a big population centers around the Senegal River, are experiencing very rapid change in terms of rainfall and in terms of water resources. So yes, actually, I would take the next slide first. We then basically took those three methodologies and combined them into a final percentage, got for ranges for the various communes that we had to make assessments of. And this basically gave us a combination of some global modeling, along with some local rainfall modeling and some real-time ground truthing of all of these assessments, which we think brought us kind of closest to an assessment possible without actually going out into the field in every site. And in some cases, we did send a team out to basically check our estimates and found that all of our checks fell within the range that we were recommending. Can I skip? I guess this is okay. So I guess that was the final output, and it also includes the accounting for climate change and kind of some adjustments for that. So ultimately, to me, this was a really cool thing as a young professional, because this was a map that was then going to be used in a lot of water systems throughout Senegal. So I guess some takeaways from this is just that the importance of looking at a couple different methodologies and kind of being creative, especially in a field where there's not a standard for how to do something, for how to approach a project. And I think that's becoming increasingly the case in a climate change context. When you're looking at water resources, something else I'll work in a bit is flood management, and you can't use historical maps anymore in the way that we used to. We used to just talk about 100-year floods and 10-year floods, and that's increasingly making less sense and increasingly not being accepted as an engineering standard, depending on who it is you're working with. I think going forward, there's going to be a lot more need for creativity in water resources and using modeling and combining tools to make the best assessments possible. And these are Vincent Uhl is the PI that I worked with under this project, and just some pictures of us on drill sites. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, really kind of experienceful, insightful presentation based on your experience. And anyone have question or any comment? Then yeah, I just have question. Actually, in case of groundwater management, even in Korea, in the Ministry of Land Infrastructure, actually before merging Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Land and Infrastructure, in the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure, handling kind of water resources management and kind of river planning or policy planning or something, even though kind of quite complex issue, the division was not that big. But in case of groundwater, actually, it's also quite higher issue for water management in Korea. So I just wanted to ask you, in the case of groundwater verification or kind of quantity management or something like that, you just introduced, you utilize the water gap model. Then how do you find that kind of, which categorized model is applicable for this target area or the in the characteristics of a project?
So water gap is a very generalized model. I think it, as you said, kind of comes down to the characteristics of the project, what you're going to use. So we use this water gap model basically because we were talking about a national scale, a very large scale, and it wouldn't be practical to do, at least not in the time and budget that we had for this project, to do modeling in Mike or any HECROS or these kinds of softwares that can do more detailed water resource modeling. We did do some ModFlow, which is quite commonly used in the United States, but maybe a bit less so outside of it. But ultimately, I'd say the model you use comes down to scale a lot. So water gap is useful at a large scale, but it's also then relatively inaccurate, as the factors that it's accounting for are really not ground truthed in each case, and groundwater can vary so much that having boreholes available and to take data from can really change your estimates in any location. So I'd say ultimately it comes down to what kind of project you're looking at and what level of detail you need for that project.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think the basic data is most important for research like this, especially in water resources field. So may I ask to you, what is most difficult for this result? What is most difficult? Yeah.
For this result?
Yeah.
I would say ultimately the field work and some of the verification was the most difficult. I'd say in this project, we got a little lucky in that things fell into place. You know, we had a few different methodologies, all of which came up with ranges. And thankfully, those ranges aligned with one another. But you know, you can definitely, especially in groundwater, have a context where you have a pretty strong outlier that changes all of your data. So I'd say the hardest part that we had with this project was getting the field work together and kind of assessing where do we need to do verification of these assessments. And whereas some of this kind of modeling assessment was done in a matter of weeks to months, the field work took, you know, maybe 6 months to a year just to get people out to verify some of this information and kind of create that final report.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And any other persons? Question? Okay, Krista, please.
I'm going to just ask a similar question that you asked Sylvia. As a young professional in, I guess, quite a technical field and quite a large scale project, what were your tools when, like, did you ever come across, like, a situation where the fact that you were young kind of became something not necessarily held against you, but I guess sort of people thought, oh, this guy's young, and what tools you had available, and I guess some advice to other young professionals that you may have that came out of this project or any other projects that you've done.
Yeah, thank you. I would say I have kind of the same answer as Sylvia, which is be on top of your shit. But to expand on that a bit, and especially, so one thing that a hydrogeologist works on is the drill site itself. And, you know, as a geologist, kind of when you're the geologist on site, you're usually in charge of managing the drill rig and kind of the drill team, which that's kind of tends to be a project-based role, but can be a bit awkward, especially when you're young, because, you know, I've managed drill teams where the lead driller has 20 years of experience and, you know, knows infinitely more than me, but at least on paper, I'm supposed to be kind of running the show. And I think in that context, humility was my greatest weapon, was just acknowledging that it was a bit of a strange situation and that I had a lot more to learn from him than he had to learn from me, and doing my best to manage the parts that were understanding what were my responsibilities and what part of those are leadership responsibilities and that I should be taking on and doing well, but at the same time being able to kind of treat the people around me as the experts and manage the work in that way.
May I one more?
Yes, please.
Yeah. The last question. Do you have something to tell to the senior engineering group as the young engineer? I think you are very passionate and young engineer. So I have a question. If you have something to tell the senior engineer group, I will take your opinion.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think just the importance of mentorship, and I think mentorship can be really difficult because there's a difference between handing someone work and handing someone a learning opportunity. I think a lot of the time they do overlap, and a lot of young people learn very well through the work they're given. But I think as a senior person, you also have to be quite conscious of trying to hand a junior person work that you think they can learn more from, and giving that in a kind of explaining that in a way that allows them to grow. And I think junior people appreciate that more than you would realize.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay. Well, actually, there is the one of the panelists, Louisa. She needs to leave earlier in 25 minutes or something like that. So we can go into Haju's presentation, or Louisa can her comment or kind of intervention this moment. Which one?
Okay.
Maybe
I think
Louisa?
it's okay. I can listen. No, it's okay. I can still listen to the presentation, and then maybe
Okay.
after I will give my short takeaway.
All right,
Okay.
all right. Okay, let's do that then. Yeah, why don't you transfer to Haju? She will make a presentation regarding water and gender nexus, more socio political perspective regarding this sector, more different approach.
Have I stopped sharing?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay. Have I? Wait, have I? I've lost my apologies. I can't seem to find the option to stop sharing. I have to quit Zoom. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. Hi. First of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity here in this session today. And I introduced previously, I'm Haeju Kim working for JHSUSTAIN, and the topic I would like to discuss in this session is water and gender, particularly for this era of climate change. Before talking about the topic, I would like to give you a little bit about my journey on it, that I started to focus on this issue of water and gender. So first of all, I had a chance to work in a resort in Maldives during my gap year in 2018. And as you may know, Maldives is known for its sinking due to the climate change. And over there, I felt the seriousness of this climate change with my own eyes, and it has become the most important issue for me. After that, I went to London to study my master's on international development, which I focused my research on gender. And the more I learned there, the more I realized was that these two different issues are closely connected to each other. So from then, I decided my career to follow this path of environment and gender in this international development sector. From now, I want to show you how they are linked to each other. The purpose of this presentation is that we should know the importance of incorporating gender when working in this water sector. Due to the time limitation, I won't go into details and just introduce some backgrounds and main points. But I hope this session will provide with you a chance to have some insights working in this sector, especially as youth. While addressing water-related problems is critical to climate change adaptation, socially vulnerable people, including women, are disproportionately affected by this because of their socioeconomic status and roles. For example, when we see these statistics, we can find out that it is mostly women who get more damage when hit by these water-related disasters. Their mortality is extremely higher, and economic damage is also higher than men. This graph can partly explain why it is, and it shows that women's vulnerability to water-related disasters and variability is strongly influenced by their socioeconomic status and gender norms and roles. Here, the circle ones indicate some social norms, including their long hair, clothes, and lack of education. And scale ones show how women's social roles, such as taking care of children or households, which restricted their mobility. Also, the triangle ones, they illustrate their women's lower social status than men, which hindered their appropriate response when disasters hit. Also, in our daily lives, women are the ones who engage more on water management. For example, 60% of women's working hours are spent on water-related work, and 200 million hours a day spent on water by women and men. And many women in developing countries, particularly, they travel great distances to find water, and climate change will make their daily lives even more difficult. This kind of situation is now getting worse due to the climate change induced water stress. At the same time, the relationship between water and women is usually limited to domestic sphere, while women's participation in public spheres, such as decision-making process in the community, is extremely limited. One important thing to point out at this point is that women cannot just be seen as passive victims of climate change and water issues. Women, particularly in rural areas, not only take the primary role for housework, as I mentioned previously, but also play a central role in resource management in communities. These make them possess local ecological, social, and political knowledge and capacity. So I can say that effective water management in communities is impossible without women's involvement. Research has also found that women involved in post-disaster recovery efforts, such as rescuing victims, road reconstruction, and food provision. In sum, because of the socially defined gender roles and conditions, women are greatly affected by climate change-induced water scarcity and related disasters, and tend to be gravely impacted by poor water management, yet they are least equipped to deal with its impacts because they have barriers on possessing social and economic resources than men. So sustainable long-term management of water, particularly in the face of climate change, therefore requires the participation of women. I want to point out current status and some challenges we are facing for incorporating gender in this water sector. In the last decade, international development scholars and organizations have advocated the importance of addressing these gender issues when coping with climate change and water. And many of the international organizations started to put this agenda importantly and highlight the importance. But challenges remain largely. As you can see in this graph, women are severely underrepresented in water management, and there is no existing gender disaggregated data and gender specific indicators to take action and properly monitor and evaluate them. Also, what I think the most important thing is current discourse in this water sector. It privileges quantitative and technical information, which often lead to overlook the social dimension of water management. This is important because of this, because we are now facing the era of climate change, while we need to have intersective perspectives to deal with. So in this session, I highlighted that encouraging women and addressing gender inequality in this sector is fundamentally important for sustainable water management, especially in this era of climate change. And my presentation ends here. It was pretty short, so I couldn't elaborate much of it, but I hope it could provide you with some insights about what we have to keep in mind and what we have to do in the future as future specialists working in this sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Haju. Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you, Haju. She just joined July of last year, and she was quite deep interest in development, but more specifically focusing on gender perspective. And actually, she has kind of play a pivotal role how making in the water sector gender issues needs to be included as a project component. And this moment, in the trend of formation of development project, cross-cutting issue needs to be included in the project. So gender assessment, social assessment, environmental assessment, that's kind of quite big categorization before we make some kind of infrastructure development project. So yeah, maybe starting from Luisa, we can kind of intervention and question session. Yeah, Luisa, please.
Okay, yeah. I will also be kind of brief, but first of all, I want to thank you, Irene, for inviting me this morning. Like, it was really nice to see you again, first of all, and seeing all of you. And well, what I want to say is I want to thank especially Sylvia and Mike for their presentation, because since I'm the first one that is trying to become a young professional in a sense, it was really nice to hear your experiences, and it was also kind of encouraging. So I hope that soon I will be able to start my career within the sustainable development, or like at least within an organization or something that can actually do something to help changing the world in a way. So it's kind of a bit, how to say, optimistic, but I hope to be able to do that soon. Well, as for my experience, like I don't have a really direct experience with water management, but I do have kind of some experiences within the topic, like within the field of climate change. First of all, I first heard about climate change when I became a Red Cross volunteer, and this was back in like 2009. So it was a topic, like at the time, the topic was not as hot as it is right now, because nowadays we became used to talking about climate change, talking about the climate effect, like how it is affecting our daily life. But 10 years ago, like the society it was not a hot topic. So like people didn't actually talk about it, like they didn't even know what it was. But within the Red Cross, like we started actually working already on climate change, like especially in sensitizing the population about it, because as I said, no one actually talked about it, like maybe just within the professional sector, but like normal people didn't talk. So it was kind of like a good starting point for me, because I had the chance to know about the topic already for a long time then. And then in a more kind of a professional way, like I approached climate change during my internship at JHSUSTAIN, like with Irene and we started researching more about the nexus between climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. So like it was important for me to research more about the topic, like seeing the topic in a more maybe in a more specific way, and especially like for me as like what I saw now, like I was researching about the topic, maybe it was in 2020, and now like I'm also seeing it more, how to say, like because like as like now that I'm back in Europe, I've seen like more of these, like the risk, like how the risk is increasing in Europe, like from climate change. Like this summer we saw the disaster in Germany, like the floods that hit like the northern part of Germany, and how people were affected by it. But also like in Italy we do have the same issue. Like so people now they're starting to know more about climate change, more about the effect that they have on our daily lives. So it's I don't know, like I just want to say, like I'm kind of glad that we're talking more about it, but I'm also still kind of worried because politicians, like especially like maybe in Italy, we're still kind of, they do talk a lot, but the action are still not as many as I would hope. And but I think maybe we may be going in the right way. Like 2 weeks ago, like in Milan, there was the pre-event for the COP 2016. So like we did have an event with dedicated to young people, like for them to, like it was given them a space to actually express their need, like to express their wish for an actual change in terms of the intervention of the government for the climate. So like I'm really happy about it, and that's it. So like I don't know if you want to ask me something, or like I just want to say that I'm happy to be here today and like having listening to your intakes and everything. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Luisa. Then you have any comments or any for your opinion? Or Josh, you just came in and you can introduce yourself. Well, it's a long time. I just can say hello. Yeah, you can just say hello to the people.
Okay, hello, my name is Josh Newton, and I'm a freelancer, a freelance consultant in issues of global water governance and political processes related to water. But then as a side hobby, I would say, I have the website Josh's Water Jobs, which some of you may know about, where we post jobs from around the world on a website for people to access.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And yeah, your kind of a comprehensive, your experience or comment will be at the final point of this session. I'll invite you again. Then maybe Dr. Kim, you have kind of intervention regarding gender, as you just mentioned, you have kinds of impression regarding this topic.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Park. As you know, I am an engineer and technician, but so the interest in engineering is mainly focused on technical areas such as how to reduce errors and how to increase accuracy and how to increase the convenience, like that. The same goes for me as an engineer. For example, if there is a phenomenon of lack of water, my interest was like this. Why is there not enough water? And what is the solution? And if there is a solution, how? And that solution is economical. That is my question. But and so I have never thought about how water affects gender problems and how it affects the educational environment. I think other engineers will be the same as me, because the engineer is very simple, as you know. However, in these days, the concept of convergence is expansion, and the existing engineering perspective is changing. In supplying water, the concept of welfare is being introduced, and the concept of service from the user's point of view is being introduced now. Furthermore, I think it is very fresh that sociological and humanistic concepts have begun to be introduced. In order to bring water, young children and women have to put time and effort into it. So if opportunity for education or social life decrease, unfairness occurs in terms of human rights equality. In the past, the problem of water shortage was a technical and engineering problem only. And only recently has the perspective expanded to the concept of water welfare. However, I think it is necessary to expand the problems of water shortage from the humanities and sociological perspectives, such as human rights equality. Today's stories were very fresh to me as an engineer, especially Dr. Kim Haeju, Dr. Very impressive for me. In the future, many engineers felt that they needed to be interested in the field of humanities and society and change their thoughts, change their thinking. To do so, the efforts of those who attended here and needed. In the future, all of you will be the key to leading society, I think. I ask for more efforts and challenges from you, and I express my gratitude and encouragement. Thank you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kim. Well, our session is quite, how I can say, it's quite sound and very aligned with kinds of gender balance. Well, actually, in case of kinds of technical session of always in the water sector, maybe 10 or 20 people, just 90% are male, and just the remaining percentage were female. And I really hope this kind of interdisciplinary specialists can have this kind of discussion session or the kind of talk session to share kinds of common points from each expertise and for knowledge sharing and make some more other different perspective than before. I hope this session or any other opportunities upcoming could be kind of chance of that. Thank you, Louisa, and thank you other commenters. And Louisa, if you need to leave, you can.
Yeah, I think I will. Then I will say my goodbyes, and it was nice seeing you all. And bye bye. See you.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Wait a second, please.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. You have.
Yeah,
okay.
I have a question to Dr. Park. So, how do you feel, and what do you feel for during this session? The young engineer or young researchers, they speak their presentation. Then I have some I have wonder for like that. How do you feel, and what is your feel in this session to Dr. Park?
Well, when I was a youngster, actually, I could not get this kind of points like Sylvia or Michael or Louisa and Haeju. I just followed, these kinds of how I can say, unified education system of Korea. I just focused on which university I should enter and what kinds of interests I have. But even though interest was not that various like this. So actually, this moment I have kind of envy of these young professionals, because even though at the current stage, their position or their status could be rather unstable, but you can make kinds of your own linkage in the various experience and kinds of open connection in this kind of society in the globe. So actually, as Sylvia mentioned and Mike mentioned, you just really kind of clear, I mean, you can have your clear vision and kind of impression from your peer group or the mentors. And within any organization or outside of specific organization, you can make any kinds of much opportunities. And you are really passionate to try that kinds of things and grasping your future and your dream. And I really want you to give you big applause regarding that. Yeah, that was my comment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, say bye. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Oh, okay.
And Kaehyun, yeah, it's your turn.
Okay. Briefly introduce myself again, especially my research area. As I've told from the beginning, I'm an environmental and urban geographer. And my personal research interest is making cities' water management sustainable and make cities resilient from water-related disaster. And I've seen that current trends of building cities water sufficient and city disaster resilient is starting to change from short-term infrastructure and engineering-based solution to a long-term governance-based solution, such as like implementing environmental awareness to the publics and implementing ESG to the corporate sector. And so I have one question to moderator Dr. Park, since you have been already working in this area. So how can youth be instrumental and devote in implementing and long-term governance and sustainability solutions in this sector? This is my question.
Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, then maybe it's better for me to share my story again, like you guys. Actually, my background was education and kind of the communication for public relations. And by chance, I just came into the water sector with the start of external affairs of Korea governmental sponsored institution. So I just started from this field work since 2005. And then I just flew like a river, like a water until now. Just 15 years, I made my career or kind of a chance or any opportunity, just it was always linked with water unintentionally. Actually, Sylvia mentioned I was also young and I was a female and I was not engineer. In case of Sylvia, she has a kind of science degree, but actually my bachelor and master is just a science, social science one. And if I have some kind of make a project formation in the center of coordination between each diverse field of water, they just always ask me, what is your specialty? Can you measure kind of peak flood height, or can you estimate kind of the water pollution non-point source, or some kinds of technical perspective they are asking? Well, that's not my role. My role is kinds of the there are lots of different technical sections, but in the kinds of this session or advocacy or some kind of development projects, what could be more prioritized one from the needs of the beneficiary or the kinds of the specific needs for linking with a high-level forum to focus on water issues, something like this. So in the case of that kind of field, I was more confident than, of course, before, better than technician, because technician is really specialized on their subsector, but they don't have much willingness to show big picture regarding in the general perspective. So I was rather generalist in the beginning, but this moment, yeah, I can say I was much more focused on in the development sector in water and climate change adaptation through this kind of chance or the experiencing that kind of barrier. And actually, I don't have much interest in studying like you. You guys are quite lots of experience in the world and degrees, and you were really passionate that kinds of academic career. But actually, the main reason for my doctoral degree was to kind of get certificated from experts. You are also one of the experts. That was my main reason for PhD. So yeah, this moment I'm really enjoying this kind of process with these various people in the world, and I wanted to get along furthermore with your growing up of your experience. Thank you. That was my answer, and yeah.
Thank you. And it was nice to see future colleagues who will be working in this sector. Yeah, and that's it for my discussion. Thank you.
And yeah, why don't you we can hear Krista? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sylvia, Mike, and Heju for all of your presentations. It was really insightful. I actually wanted to start with a question for Heju before I kind of give myself, I guess, an introduction, if that's okay. So as a young professional, especially as a woman, working in that gender space, where you're essentially advocating for increased participation of women and children in the water sector to increase resilience, and in order to have that intersectional participation and come out with solutions essentially with women and children. It can be quite political. I feel it can be quite a political space, quite contentious at times. My question is, have you I guess, being put in a position where it's been quite political for you, and as a young professional who's a woman, how have you, I guess, managed that? And yeah, how did you experience that sort of situation?
Thank you, Crystal. And my answer is yes. Can you hear me now? Clearly? Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Crystal. And then my answer is yes. I'm still struggling as young professional because now JHSUSTAIN is now participating for international development project in Laos, which is for water management, and then enhancing the water governance, and then as well as building a flood forecasting management system there. Yes, and sorry, yeah, and I'm working with many engineers for that project, and I honestly have no answer to that for your, but what I can say is to keep our career. I think the most useful thing for this women's empowerment in this sector is to not to give up this position, even though we are struggling always. I think that is one of the most important things to make this sector more, let's say, better. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I will say, I guess, I'll provide now a little bit of background on what I do in New Zealand. Is I come from more of a regulatory context. So I work for local government, and my role is to receive proposals and to receive applications for developments. And I have to assess what they're proposing and consider whether they're acceptable, both in terms of their potential effects on the environment, as well as do they fit in within the policy context of that area, and is it something that we are wanting to have. And I guess being in that space as a young professional who's also a woman, there's a lot of specialists and technical, I guess, engineers out there, and my colleagues included, who are a lot older than I am. And I will agree, it's a space where you can struggle a little bit, not necessarily with my colleagues, but especially with external customers. They kind of challenge you quite a lot. But I think as someone who's young, you can get away with being really persistent, which I think is an advantage. So yeah, I would encourage you to just keep going, because it's really encouraging to see you know, another young woman in that space, and really advocating for and pushing for more involvement with women and children in I guess solutions and management in the water sector. But I guess going back to a bit more context of what I do in terms of the proposals that I receive, specifically in terms of water, I deal with the 3 waters, so your sewage, your potable water and stormwater. And I have to liaise a lot with our internal specialists in council to understand how it fits in within our existing public infrastructure networks, whether it's going to affect the capacity and any flow-on effects that they may have, if any. And I also work in the natural hazard space, so inundation, flooding from intense rainfall, and coastal erosion. So we will generally receive applications for subdivisions or new residential buildings or whatever in those areas. And my job is to assess those proposals, put it within, assess it against our city plan. So that's what I work under, is a city plan, which has some requirements and a framework within which proposals should generally fit within. And working with the technical specialists, which involve stormwater modelers, geotechnical specialists, coastal specialists, and yeah, my job is to pretty much put all that information together and put it into one report and give my recommendations on a decision for that proposal. And yeah, and if we have any concerns, going back and forth with applicants saying, hey, you actually haven't addressed this properly. Can you go away and answer my questions, or go away and address this in a way that council will accept? Yeah, if anyone has any questions for me, happy to answer any.
Okay. Okay, then I have a question. So Crystal, you have worked environmental planner in the Tauranga Council,
Yep.
right? Yeah, almost 2 years, right? So there is kind of to work environmental specialist in New Zealand. There is a kind of specific step in the stereotype, I mean, in the categorized step, or there is various way to work environmental specialist?
Yeah, so what's really good in New Zealand is that you don't necessarily have to have a degree. So I actually studied environmental planning. So it was kind of natural for me to be an environmental planner and be in this industry. But as long as you have relevant experience or a degree that is somewhat related or has the relevant skills, you don't have to have a planning degree. And a lot of it is learnt on the job. So a lot of it is you get an application and you talk to your colleagues, you talk to your specialists, and it's something that you can just do on the ground as you and learn as you go. So you don't necessarily need anything to be in the industry. You just kind of have to have relevant experience or relevant knowledge, or I guess a drive to understand and be more engaged, I guess, in the industry. And I guess being in a local government space, it's a lot more forgiving because you have a much broader support team. In a consultancy, I'm not quite sure, I haven't experienced what it's like in a consultancy, but what I've heard is it can be quite similar depending on where you go. Sometimes you are kind of left on your own, but in general, you don't have to have a relevant degree, or you don't have to have the degree for planning, just something that's relevant. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because in the case of the environmental assessment for the development projects, they always kind of asking how can I say license or the relevant degree or something. Anyway, something needs to show evidence what I can specialize in this kind of assessment. So maybe you could be kind of professional to this kind of dealing of environmental assessment if we need, like the later project or any other upcoming project like that. So I'm really happy you get that kind of strong point regarding your career and your sector, and it's really nice hear from you. Okay, then if you don't have any question, last but not least, because we have already 15 minutes to 3, I would like to invite Josh. Josh is a really, we just a long friend over a decade, but I think maybe since the 2015 World Water Forum, we could not dimly involve or something work with. So I really happy to see you. And yeah, Josh, your turn.
Okay, so I'll go into a little bit about my own background, and then I was asked also to provide from, say, my jobs website perspective, where the job trends are, what the job market is looking like right now, anyway, I'll get into that because it's very contextual. But so my own background, I'm also studied social sciences. I actually started water when I was doing an internship in Argentina a very long time ago, looking at the socioeconomic and environmental impacts of a proposed aqueduct that was going to be put in the Piedmont area above the city of Mendoza in order to urbanize it. And I was basically thrown into that, but that's where my interest in water first began because of the multidisciplinary nature of the issue. There was legal issues, environmental, socioeconomic, political, especially political, which is what actually then got me interested in working on transboundary waters. So that was the focus of ultimately my bachelor's degree and then my master's degree as well. So I studied international relations, but always with a focus on water. So water diplomacy, if you will. So the first half of my career, I was a transboundary water person. But about 10 years ago, I got right after I'd started my PhD, which was going to be on transboundary waters and international relations as well, I was asked to do a short-term consultancy at UNESCO in Paris on the World Water Forum, which takes place every 3 years. And this was for the 2009 edition that was in Turkey. And so I agreed to do that, and a 5-week consultancy turned into 2 years, and ended up coordinating the ministerial process of that World Water Forum. So 140 governments, ministers came together. And what I realized after that is that, okay, the UN system actually does not have a venue where governments come together to talk about water, especially back then, over 10 years ago. And so why was that the case? And why was it that the forum was the best that was out there, and it wasn't that good for in terms of impact? So that changed my PhD focus actually from transboundary to global water governance. So really looking at the macro picture about how governments interact with one another at the global level. So basically in the UN system, or at the World Bank, or in regional development banks, or the regional economic commissions. And so since I finished my PhD, I've been doing work along those lines, doing a lot of consulting work, because it's kind of just what I fell into, mostly because of interesting projects on this global water governance. So I helped formulate SDG 6 and the consultation process that took place before that, and then have since worked with various organizations on SDG 6, and then also helping organizations develop their strategies for an international approach or a global approach to their water issues as well. So that's kind of my work side. And then, as I mentioned, and as some of you know, I have the website on the side. So the second part of my chat here will be on perspectives that I've gained, just anecdotes, if you will, from looking at or having posted something like 35,000 jobs over the past 5 years. So it's a lot of some insights have come of that, especially in the last year and a half as we've been going through the pandemic. So what I've been seeing is that there's a few emerging topics, and some of them have been mentioned already, but technology, data, digitalization, those are really on the up and up right now in terms of the amount of positions that are open. There's more organizations, more governments, and private sector, definitely more attention on that space. So there's more jobs appearing in that space, but there isn't the personnel available because of it. There's kind of been a lack. The amount of personnel hasn't caught up with the demand. So I see that some organizations struggle to find good people for those types of jobs in the water space, but that is changing quickly. Climate change has been mentioned several times, but so climate change adaptation, we're not going to, that's going to be on a, pretty straight continuum for a while now, for the foreseeable future. So there are more and more jobs related to climate change adaptation, especially related to water, as we know how much climate adaptation is related to water. So, and also it's a way that organizations are seen to be able to attract funds related to climate change funds related to water is through the climate change funds that are available. There's a lot more funds available for climate change in the international space than water. So there, and obviously it's a huge issue. So those jobs are also been on the up and up. Wastewater is another one that still is a little quiet now, but is, I think, on the verge of going somewhere, but just because of the reality of where we're going to have to head in terms of wastewater collection, treatment, reuse. And so, but it already starting to see that happen with more and more jobs. But I think that's only going to be go up exponentially. What else? So in SDG 6, especially 6.1 and 6.2 on WASH, we're 9 years away. We're behind in actually being able to achieve the universal goal of access to water and sanitation. So there will be, already through COVID, there was more and more WASH jobs available. And that actually is continuing now, even as certain parts of the world are more at equilibrium. But because of the push that governments in the world will be making towards SDG 6, we're probably going to see more and more attention there. And what I've been hearing actually quite a bit in the past few months from organizations is that they're having a real hard time finding good people for not so much junior positions, but say mid-level and senior positions. They're really struggling. So and that's that the demand for those positions are only going to grow, is only going to grow. Other smaller spaces, or yes, well, other smaller spaces that are also seeing growth in, as was mentioned, gender is one that's definitely starting to be included in a lot of projects, that gender aspects to water resources and WASH. So I'm seeing more jobs in that space, definitely. And I think that's only going to continue to grow. ESG was mentioned, and that's so ESG and then water stewardship. Also, the corporate world is definitely taking more notice of water issues. So water stewardship, I'm seeing more and more, and I really do try to seek out those jobs because I think they're super interesting. So I put those on the website as much as I can find them. Yes, I think those are kind of the engineering, more technical. Those jobs are not going anywhere. There's actually less people worldwide are actually studying engineering. So actually, I think we're gonna actually have, I see so many engineering positions, water related engineering positions, civil engineering. And so those jobs are going to continue and probably be more available just because less people are studying those issues these days as a global phenomenon. So I think that's kind of an overview of what I've been seeing. And I just, a few just pieces of advice very quickly because I'm pretty much out of time, is that don't ever be afraid to reach out to ask for advice about career stuff to anybody. This is your peers, your senior people, and no matter who they are, how important they are, quote unquote, just don't be afraid to reach out. Everybody loves giving advice. And so it's really it's easy to shoot an email and ask. And I mean, I'm in the process of looking for work right now. So I'm doing this myself, not so junior anymore. So
oh, sad.
Yeah. So so don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And Mike mentioned a few things, and I caught the end of his talk about having like mentorship, hugely important. Had them throughout my career. And so I highly suggest having a mentor, many mentors, and they can be for a short amount of time, they can be for a longer amount of time. Whatever kind of, and these different people are helpful in different ways, whether it's technical or project management advice or life advice related to water, et cetera, or work-life balance. Also, the second thing that Mike said about being humble, I think that in humility, I think that was spot on. I think that's what's helped me in my career a lot. And I learned that from two of my mentors as I was growing up. And just a last note would just be please stick with water resources, water and sanitation, whatever subsector of water you work in, because it's obviously a huge issue. We need everybody. It's an all hands on deck issue. So please stick with the field, and hopefully collaborate with all of you eventually in the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, your advice, Josh. It's really nice to hear your experience and your insight. Actually, Josh's water job is also kind of volunteer platform. It was started like that to seek good people in the sector and make kind of a linkage the organization needs and people. So it's this moment quite. I got the point. It was reshuffle for more kinds of the extensive platform for more pivotal law. Also congratulate regarding your new kind of position of your Joshi's water job. So actually this moment is just 2 minutes 3, and yeah, if time allows, I would like to hear your just a small talk to wrap up, but maybe it's better for us to wrap up this moment. Italy has a quite early morning this moment, and US is also very early morning, 2 a.m. or something like that, right? So, okay, thanks a lot joining this session, and we will keep updated through via mail or maybe kinds of platform through Joshi's Water Job or Sylvia's Water and Science Policy or JHSUSTAIN. We can have many chances to link. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll keep you updated. Bye.
Bye.